It's inevitable that you'll have to wrap your handlebars a number of times throughout the life of your bike. The good news is it's something you can do right at home, super easy, and it's a great way to customize your bike. So let's get right into talking about how to wrap your handlebars. Okay, so the tool list for this job is actually very short. First off, you'll need a pair of rather sharp scissors. Next, you'll need a roll of electrical tape. Next, and this one's optional, but a roll of silicone self-fusing tape. And I'll show you what this is for a little later. Also optional, a roll of double stick tape. Next, of course, you'll need your bar tape. There are a few different factors to consider when selecting a bar tape. First, of course, being the kind of style and aesthetic of the tape. Next is the thickness or cushion level of the tape. And then finally, the surface quality or texture and the stickiness of the tape. Now, most of these factors are really going to boil down to personal preference. However, if you do select a thicker tape, such as a cork tape, I would suggest wrapping it with a little more stretch. That way, it'll lay a little flatter once you're done. You also need a pair of bar end plugs. Now keep in mind that most of these bar tapes will come with bar end plugs. However, they're usually the cheaper plastic models, and if you want something a little more upgraded, you can get third-party bar end plugs such as these anodized aluminum ones. Lastly, you'll need a means of either mounting your bike or somehow keeping it stable while you work on the handlebars. With that said, let's get over to the bike and get started. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is remove the existing bar tape. And it's a little unfortunate because this bar tape is in excellent condition, but we do wanna change the look of this. So we're gonna start by first popping out this bar end plug. And I'm just gonna get my fingers in there, and okay, with a little bit of effort, this will pop right out. Next, we're gonna pull this hood cover back. And we're also gonna take this tape here at the top, take our scissors and just cut that off. Then we're gonna take the electrical tape and just peel that right off. And unfortunately, there is no saving this tape, so don't worry about trying to pull this off nicely. Even if it's in great condition, the removal process will destroy the tape, unfortunately. All right, and once we get down to here, we're just gonna pull off any remaining little pieces. This came off relatively cleanly, so we're just gonna do the same thing on the other side. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna use our double stick tape. And again, this is optional, but it does provide a slightly more refined end product. So we're gonna put the double stick tape right at the very edge of where we want to end our bar tape. And in this case, it's going to be right where the transition occurs to the bar and kind of the recessed area where the bar tape is typically located. So I'm just going to line this up right along that edge. We're going to do it one more time over here. So we have two bands of double stick tape right at the end of where we want to wrap our bar tape. So oftentimes bar tape includes a little piece of tape that can be placed around this area right here. Now, unfortunately, this particular bar tape did not come with that, but that's not a problem. All we're gonna do is make our own, and we're just gonna do a quick little measurement. The tape going around, got that marked with my finger here, and take my scissors and simply cut a piece. And I'm going to remove the adhesive backing, and we're just going to apply that right around here. All right, now we can get started. So we're going to take our bar tape, and we're going to start at the bottom here. And I'm going to start the wrap around this way. Now, as we go up, I want to make sure that I have an overlap all the way around here. We don't want to have a situation where we start off with an overlap, but we miss a spot. Because if we miss a spot, then this can't get tucked into the bar end cap, and it's not going to look very good. So we want to make sure that the overlap is all the way around, and that way we can push all of this into the bar end cap. Okay, so I'm going to start peeling back the adhesive. And again, I'm going to start on the bottom here, and I've got overlap all the way around. And because this is kind of a spongy bar tape, I'm going to give it a little bit of stretch so that this lays as flat as possible. So we want this adhesive strip here, which is going down the middle, to be split between the edge of this bar tape and the bar itself. So as we go around, we're securing the tape to the bar. Okay, and I'm just checking to make sure these intervals look as even as possible. And it's a good idea to check on both sides as you go. Okay, once we start creeping up this curved part, the bottom interval is going to stay about the same, and the top interval is going to get closer and closer together. So we're kind of stretching it on the bottom to make this curve here. Okay, and if we get to a point where all this excess is starting to get in the way, it's a good idea to just kind of rip and tear that off. Okay, and especially when we go around this curve here, we do want to stretch it just so that the tape contours to the bar. Okay, now right when we get about here, we want to be at a point where we're nearing the bottom of this hood. We're going to start doing a figure 8. Now we don't want to wait until we're touching the bottom, because we are going to come back and loop around one last time over here. So as we go around here, as you can see, we're close but not quite there. I'm going to go around and then up and over this bar at the top. So I'm coming up over the top, and as I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I'm not covering up any of the registration holes that this hood needs to rest into. Otherwise, the hood itself is not going to lay flat in the end. So I've gone around the backside and around the top here, and I'm going to come around the bottom, and this is where we're going to get right up and under the bottom, right under the bottom of this hood here. And then we're going to go back to the top and continue on the top now. Okay, and again, giving it a little bit of extra stretch around this curved area. So when we get to this end point, we're gonna go right over the end line, which was where we had our double stick tape. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of take my pen and I'm gonna mark the first point at which the tape crosses over that end line. And I'm gonna continue with my tape and I'm gonna mark the point at which the tape finishes crossing over that line, if that makes sense. Okay, so we should have 2 points here, and we're gonna cut a diagonal between those two. Okay, so we've cut the piece right along here, and we're gonna just take that right onto the double-sided tape, and we're gonna go right along that finished clean edge there, and this will disappear along the bottom. Okay, so the advantage of that double stick tape is that this will really help kind of secure it while we do the final taping. Otherwise, this thing is going to constantly be trying to unwind itself while you put on the electrical tape. So we're going to do the electrical tape next. And what we want to do is we want to tape it this way towards the back. And the reason for that is when you're riding and you're gripping on this, you're more likely to pull down as opposed to pushing over the front, or at least hopefully. So we want to wrap the tape this way so that it's not gonna be unwound while you have this downward pressure. So starting the tape underneath at the bottom, I am going to go right along the edge of the bar tape. Okay, and if you pull it tight and overlap it just a hair, you'll get that tape to kind of enclose the edge of the bar tape. Okay, and then I'm gonna end it at the bottom. Take our scissors, give it a quick snip. Okay, and we're gonna press that down. Now, a lot of times a bar tape will provide a finishing piece of tape. This piece of tape can now go over this electrical tape. However, I found that both the finishing tape and this electrical tape has a tendency to come off. It may be the conditions that I ride in here in Hawaii. It's very humid, so that might be part of the issue. But what I like to do is I like to use this self-fusing silicone tape. Now, this is something that, again, as I mentioned earlier, is optional. But what this tape is it fuses instantly to itself. So as soon as the tape touches itself, it becomes one piece. And that's why there's this liner in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut off maybe about 4 or 5 inches of it. Before I start wrapping this around, what I want to do is I'm gonna cut off the corners of this tape. And the reason for this is as I stretch it, the corners can oftentimes kind of stick out. So if I cut off the corners right like that, as I stretch it, I won't have these little sharp pointy edges sticking out. So we just pull off this liner here and be careful, make sure that the tape doesn't touch itself. And so once again, I'm gonna pull it and I'm gonna start underneath to kind of hide that starting point. And I'm gonna put that right over. And now you do have to hold it the entire time. This is not a tape that is sticky. So you do have to hold it until it comes back around and touches itself again. So once it's overlapped, give it a little press and it is now one piece. So I'm gonna take it over one more time. And I don't wanna stretch it too much because then it gets super thin and it won't cover the electrical tape. If you just give it a little squeeze right at the end, it fuses together. Now it's a little shiny, so it's not quite as nice as some of the other tapes, but this will not come apart. This literally becomes a band that goes around. So I like it. It's been the one thing that stays put. So that's how I recommend finishing these off. Next, we're gonna just fold these back down. Okay, and because we did not cover any of the registration holes, this goes back and lies nice and flat. And then finally, we're going to finish off this piece right here. We're gonna tuck in all this material here and then put the plug in. So we're gonna tuck in all of that and push this plug in there. This requires a little Allen wrench. The plastic versions of this, you just push in and you're done. Okay, and we're done.